Hello everyone, here's a brief introduction for you to the mini-series we are starting today, dedicated to the fascinating era of ancient Egypt that we have already discussed in the past. As you know well, this mini-series will have its own dedicated playlist in which we will regularly welcome guests who specialize in a particular field or who are simply collaborating with us on a given topic. In addition to the homemade episodes, not everything will necessarily be done in a row. Don't worry, there will of course be other topics to cover besides the series. So let's answer this big, no huge question and give it a simple, clear, and historical answer. What is ancient Egypt? If we simplify the concept, as Dr. Sophie Desplanques, the Egyptology expert, describes, ancient Egypt is a period in the history of Egypt. There are three main historical phases: prehistory, the Pharaonic era, and the Greco-Roman period. Pharaonic Egypt began in the Archaic or Thinite era. This period begins with the physical and symbolic unification of Egypt by a certain Narmer. The Archaic period includes Egypt's first two dynasties, which laid the groundwork for its future Pharaonic civilization. Remember this concept of dynasty well, it's crucial for placing things in the timeline of Pharaonic Egypt. Egyptian pharaohs are organized into dynasties numbered from 1 to 30 and more. These are foreign dynasties classified by a Greco-Egyptian priest in the early 3rd century before Christ. It's a certain Manethon, so as you've noted, this Manethon comes after the Pharaonic era and comes to us directly from the Greco-Roman period. Following these first two dynasties, Egyptian civilization flourished under three great empires: the Old Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom, and the New Kingdom. Each period, at the end of an empire, opened onto times of turmoil, known as intermediate periods. Mainly, these involve Egypt's political and territorial fragmentation after royal authority declined, sometimes due to internal issues, other times to foreign invasions. Egypt is then split among various local and foreign dynasties sharing power, occasionally butting heads. Due to the prevailing chaos, these periods are generally hard to pinpoint precisely. We'll mainly cover the Pharaonic period from 3100 before Christ to 332 before Christ in this mini-series. As you probably already know, the kings of ancient Egypt are referred to as pharaohs. Here's a great chance to address a common misconception. This term, though it feels natural now, was only used later to refer to the ancient Egyptian king. Don't worry, I'll explain. The term pharaoh comes from the ancient Egyptian pair A, which means great house, a term referring to the royal palace where the king of Egypt lived. This term originally referred to the palace, not the king, and was rarely used alone. Typically, it would be used in a sentence like servant of the great house, referring to servant of Pharaoh. You're starting to get it. Let's keep going and it'll get even clearer. In practice, Egyptians used this term to refer to the king himself, not just his palace. During the New Kingdom, around the 15th century before Christ, and that's how we ended up using the word pharaoh to refer to their kings, even though half of the history of Pharaonic Egypt took place without this usage. From a geographical point of view, beyond the commonplaces that the history of Pharaonic Egypt is closely linked to the Nile. A sacred river, its floods brought both joy and hardship. Egypt then was very different from today. The savanna once extended much farther north, and the fertile strip was much wider than it is today. Egyptian hunters and nobles once hunted gazelles, ostriches, mouflons, and giraffes. You can probably guess, but hunting giraffes on the banks of the Nile in Egypt is just a little bit more complicated today. In summary, during the Pharaonic period, one of the earliest states in history emerged, possibly the first. The population of ancient Egypt was guided, organized, and supervised by a government that enacted laws and whose actions were carried out by a solid and generally effective administration, undoubtedly justifying the designation of a state, if not the very first state in human history. This first video will therefore be your vessel for the fabulous journey we are about to begin. You're now ready to explore or rediscover this illustrious civilization that Egyptologists have revived. See you very soon.